The Galactic Empire announced the executions as if reading the weather report. Calm, clinical, almost bored. 5 human woman generals, displayed in holographic stillness, their names floating beneath like footnotes in history. Eliminated for crimes against imperial order. Billions watched across the stars while the imperial anchor, a tall insectoid with crystalline wings, spoke in a tone that implied humans should simply shrug and continue their day. But the universe was not naive. Across fringe systems and forgotten colonies, entire species froze. A tremor passed quietly through civilizations that had once fought beside humanity, and survived only because humans had insisted on leaving no friend behind. They remembered the whisper shared in war councils long ago. Never harm their women commanders. They're the heart of the hive. Earth did not respond immediately. That alone terrified half the galaxy. For hours, the Sol system fell silent, as though humanity inhaled and held the breath like a quivering string. Cameras pointed toward the blue planet, waiting for riots, wailing, declarations of vengeance. Instead, lights flickered on one building after another across the continents, forming a grid of activity. Humanity didn't mourn publicly. It prepared privately, a habit older than its recorded history. Only one message left Earth that day, brief enough to feel like a glitch. We acknowledge your actions. Stand by. On the Galactic Council floor, diplomats laughed. A scaled ambassador from the Creel dynasty tapped his claw on the table, and declared that humans were finally learning submission. Another, a bronze-skinned orrery with bioluminescent spots, joked. They must be reviewing their emotional support protocols. Even the elder species allowed themselves a chuckle. Earth's silence was interpreted as shock, weakness, or fear, an assumption that repeated itself throughout alien history right before things went catastrophically wrong. At precisely the moment the Council's laughter reached its peak, General Avery Stone stepped off a shuttle into the blinding white corridor of the diplomatic wing. 32 years old, her posture relaxed, her expression gentle, she looked less like a military commander and more like a teacher arriving early for class. Her hair was tied back in a simple knot, her uniform spotless but unadorned, and her eyes, dark, steady, unhurried, slid over her surroundings with a predator's patience disguised as courtesy. Few aliens recognized her. Fewer understood the danger in her calmness. A pair of guards stood at the entrance to the council hall, both towering reptilian species with ceremonial spears. When Avery approached, the taller one blocked her path with a rattling hiss. Humans are not permitted to enter without emotional clearance, he warned. You may be unstable. Avery smiled faintly, as if grateful for the reminder. Thank you for your concern, she replied. I assure you, I'm quite stable today. The guard bristled, unable to interpret the softness of her tone. Humans had always spoken like that. Polite words packaged around implications no translator could fully capture. He stepped aside reluctantly. Avery nodded, walked past him, and entered the council chamber as though she'd been expected. The moment she stepped into the room, dozens of alien heads turned. Murmurs passed through the chamber like ripples across water. She stopped at the center podium, placed her hands behind her back, and inclined her head toward the presiding officials. Esteemed council, she said, voice level and warm. Thank you for receiving me on such short notice. A four-eyed senator sneered. We assumed Earth would be occupied with grief. We are, Avery said softly. But grief never stopped us from attending meetings. The room shifted, subtle distrust seeping into the air. Avery remained unbothered. Her expressiveness was minimal, her breathing slow, her tone almost soothing. Each word she spoke was wrapped in American conversational politeness, gentle phraseology masking razor edges. Another counselor, one who had advocated for the executions, leaned forward. If your planet intends retaliation, we encourage you to reconsider. You humans are emotional creatures. That is true, Avery agreed. We feel deeply. It's one of our more charming flaws. Then surely, the counselor pressed, you understand escalation is unwise. Avery's smile did not change, but something in the air tightened. The invisible moment predators shift weight before lunging. Escalation, she murmured, requires a starting point. Humanity did not choose one. Whispers flooded the room. Several diplomats exchanged glances, suddenly aware that humans had arrived not grieving, not panicked, but calculating. Avery's composure unsettled them more than 1,000 human warships would have. A Creel representative snapped. "You dare imply the Empire acted unjustly?" "I imply nothing," she answered. "I state facts. Our 5 generals were on a peace mission, unarmed, under Council protection. Their execution was not a military victory. It was an insult. Insults mattered. Every species in the chamber knew it. But none had expected humanity to treat the loss of high-ranking leaders as something personal. An ornery diplomat clicked anxiously. "Earth must not consider war. Your species lacks the numbers for full confrontation." "We've never relied on numbers," Avery replied. "We rely on motivation. You provided that." Another wave of murmurs struck the chamber. Several alien aides quietly excused themselves, sending encrypted messages back home. The elder species in attendance exchanged grim looks. They remembered the last time humans fought with purpose. Whole fleets vanished. 2 empires crumbled. Avery stepped away from the podium, approaching the council table with a softness that made several delegates recoil. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't posture or threaten. She simply leaned in slightly and said, "Earth appreciates your transparency. We will respond soon. We intend to be thorough." The word hung in the air like a guillotine. Without waiting for permission to leave, she exited the chamber. Her footsteps were light, almost soundless, as she walked down the hallway. When she reached a quiet alcove overlooking the starport, she paused, resting her palm briefly against the glass. Beyond it, thousands of small lights flickered: shuttles, transports, carrier vessels. The Empire's pride. She drew a slow breath. Then she tapped the comlink beneath her collar. The device warmed. A tone chimed in her ear. "Stone to command," she whispered. "Status?" A voice answered immediately, calm, steady, unmistakably human. "All fleets are in position. Awaiting your signal." Avery closed her eyes briefly. Not in grief, but in reverence. The 5 generals had known the risk when they walked into that peace summit. They went anyway. And because they did, the galaxy was about to learn exactly what it meant to wound humanity's heart. "Transmit Phase 1, she said. The comm clicked. A moment later, alarms erupted across the starport. Alien officers sprinted between bays. Engines flared to life. Warning sirens howled. Avery opened her eyes, watching the chaos begin. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet carried the weight of an approaching storm. "Stand by," she repeated. "Earth is done waiting." The alarms screaming through the starport spread in ripples across the Galactic Empire, carrying with them a sensation unfamiliar to the ruling species: dread. It wasn't the volume of the alert that unnerved them, but the timing. The Empire's systems were engineered to predict and prevent crises before they ever erupted. Yet here they were, sound, fury, confusion, unfolding only seconds after a single human whispered a command. Those who had worked with humans in the past recognized the signs, the way prey recognizes the shadow of a hawk before the talons strike. General Avery Stone moved through the chaos like a calm eye inside a hurricane. Aliens shoved past one another, wings thrashing, claws clicking, scales rattling in fear. Avery's pace remained even, her hands clasped lightly behind her back. She had no need to run. Momentum favored her species now. Every alarm blaring above her only echoed the heartbeat of a plan decades in the making. She took a service lift to the starport's upper balcony, stepping into a wide glass corridor where the sky burned gold with the setting light of the system's twin suns. Outside, Imperial cruisers launched in frantic succession, their propulsion trails streaking upward in crooked, panicked lines. Engineers scrambled below, shouting in incompatible languages. At the far end of the corridor, an alien commander, tall, skeletal, clad in ceremonial bone armor, spotted her and froze mid-stride. "You," he rasped, mandibles quivering. "You triggered this." Avery offered him a polite nod. "Sir, respectfully, your empire triggered this about 6 hours ago." He lunged forward, then stopped himself abruptly, realization outweighing rage. Humans fought in close quarters with terrifying precision. Even an unarmed human could dismantle a foe twice their size with a single, calm motion. Maintaining distance became the safest choice. "What is happening?" the commander demanded. Avery gestured toward the viewing glass. "That depends on your perspective." "From Earth's viewpoint?" "Accountability." "From yours?" "Probably something closer to panic." His mandibles clicked with fury. "You think your species can wage war on an empire of our scale?" Avery studied his armor, its polished bones etched with victories the empire celebrated like trophies. "Sir," she said softly, "with respect, humans do not wage war for scale, only purpose." The commander's pupils narrowed. What purpose could possibly justify? "5 generals," she said simply. "Women who saved our planet 3 separate times. Mothers. Officers. Strategists you never even understood. They walked into a peace mission, trusting this council's protection, and your empire murdered them. That was necessary for order." Avery shook her head, her disappointment genuine. There is no universe where murdering emissaries of peace qualifies as order. The commander stepped back, suddenly aware of something he could not articulate. A shift. A quietness in her voice that felt like the stillness before a seismic rupture. He composed himself and sneered. "Your forces are unprepared. You lack numbers, territory, and influence. The Empire is eternal." Avery's lips curved into a small, harmless smile. "That's adorable." Before he could decipher the insult, her comm link vibrated gently. She tapped it once. "Command to stone," a familiar voice said. "You're clear for confirmation. Phase 1 is underway." The alien commander stiffened. Avery nodded. "Acknowledged. Proceed." When she turned back, the commander's defiance had cracked into something raw. "What did you do?" he whispered. Avery motioned toward the horizon. "Not me. Them." As if responding to her cue, the twin suns dimmed for a heartbeat, eclipsed by enormous shadows. The Empire's orbital defense grid flickered, then went dark, one sector at a time. Far above the starport, human fleets phased into view. Sharp-edged ships crafted for efficiency rather than ceremony, hulls marked with the insignia of the global coalition. Their arrival made no sound, yet their presence roared. The commander staggered backward, dropping to one knee. "Impossible, you cannot breach our perimeter." Avery didn't answer immediately. She watched the unfolding ballet in the sky. Hundreds of ships forming geometric formations, weaving through the disabled defense lines with surgical precision. Humanity didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply moved. "Our species learns differently," she finally said. "We aren't the oldest. We aren't the biggest. We aren't the strongest. But we adapt faster than anyone you've ever encountered." Her voice lowered just slightly, the softness taking on weight. "You kill one of us, we take note. You kill 5 of our finest, we reorganize the future." A group of alien technicians scrambled toward the balcony's emergency exit, pushing past Avery in a flurry of desperation. She didn't move to stop them. Their fear was not her target. The Empire itself was. Lights flickered overhead as energy conduits overloaded. Somewhere deep within the station, a reactor thumped like a wounded heart. Avery took a slow breath, letting the metallic scent of overheating systems roll over her senses. The station's infrastructure groaned, adjusting to stress it had never faced before. Her comlink chimed again. "Stone, the fleets report success across all major checkpoints. Orbital control is collapsing. Phase 2 requesting authorization." Avery leaned against the glass railing, gazing down at the frantic movements of the Empire's personnel. "Not yet," she said quietly. "Let them understand the cost first." She ended the transmission before command could argue. Her decisions were final now. Not because she outranked everyone, but because she understood what 5 women had died for. Their final act wasn't a sacrifice, it was a signal. The commander struggled to his feet, gripping a support beam to steady himself. "Human, why do this? Why invite annihilation?" Avery turned to him, eyes steady and unblinking. We didn't invite anything. We responded. She tilted her head, considering him. Your empire built its authority on domination. Ours built its unity on survival. When you threatened our people, you taught us something important. And what is that? He whispered. That the galaxy still doesn't understand humans. Her tone softened, almost sympathetic. But don't worry. You're about to. In the distance, a low tremor vibrated through the starport floor, distant impacts synchronized like drumbeats. Human ships descended in tight formations, each movement deliberate, disciplined, terrifyingly calm. Alien vessels attempted countermeasures, scattering like startled insects. None succeeded. Avery watched the spectacle with a composure bordering on reverence. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel it. The ache of loss, the fury beneath her ribs, the pride in her species. Humans had always been underestimated. It was practically a cultural tradition. But this time, their underestimation had consequences that would reshape the stars. Her comm buzzed again, a single encrypted ping. Not from command. From an unknown source. Avery's breath caught. The message contained only 3 words, encoded in a format known exclusively to the 5 fallen generals. She stared at the display, heart pounding once, sharply. They knew. The corridor lights dimmed, and before she could process the revelation fully, the encryption unlocked a second line. One that set her pulse alight with a mix of dread and awe. Begin Phase 0. The encrypted words pulsed on Avery's wrist display like a heartbeat trying to force itself into the world. Begin Phase 0. It wasn't possible, at least not logically. The 5 generals were gone. Their codes should have died with them, scattered into fragments so deeply buried that even Earth's own intelligence networks couldn't have accessed them. But the letters glowed with the same subtle signature they had once used when sending messages during covert operations. A pattern too intricate to counterfeit. Avery blinked once, then twice, but the message didn't disappear. Instead, it blinked back at her, as if the past had suddenly reached forward and laid a hand against her chest. She stepped away from the railing, pulse tightening. Below her, the starport shook violently as another series of tremors rumbled through the structure. Outside, human fleets cut through the sky with cold precision, carving paths through Empire defenses that flickered like dying embers. Yet none of that distracted her. The words consumed her entirely. Phase 0 was never meant to be activated. It wasn't even a contingency, more like a ghost, a myth whispered only in the quietest corners of war rooms. She tapped her comlink. Stone to command. Who authorized Phase 0? There was a long pause, too long. Then command's voice returned, cautious. General, we didn't send anything. Are you certain it wasn't a fragment from legacy files? Legacy files don't self-assemble, she snapped. And they don't identify themselves with the code of the deceased. The silence that followed carried a tremor of fear. Avery severed the connection before they could question her further. Something far older and deeper than their current operation was stirring. A plan the generals had woven beneath layers of secrecy, one she herself had never been allowed to see. A panel beside the balcony slid open abruptly, revealing a young alien officer stumbling inside, pale and trembling. He was a smaller species, soft-skinned, with quivering frills along his temples, his uniform stained with fuel. General Stone, he blurted. The Empire's central grid is collapsing. They think it's human sabotage. Avery studied him. His voice shook, but he wasn't lying. She could hear the sincerity in every frantic breath. It's not sabotage, she said quietly. It's inevitability. The alien swallowed hard. Why are you doing this? Why fight a war this scale? She regarded him with a gentleness that felt misplaced amidst the roaring chaos. Because you shouldn't have been forced to ask that. Because the Empire trained you to fear questions. He blinked, confused but listening. And because justice, she added, is not an emotion. It's a responsibility. Before he could respond, the floor vibrated violently, knocking him off balance. Avery caught his arm with steady hands. Even in upheaval, she was unshakably composed. Go, she said. "Find a shelter. This station won't hold much longer." The alien hesitated. "You're not what they say you are." Avery's expression softened briefly, almost mournfully. "I know." He ran. Avery turned and began moving through the upper corridor with controlled urgency. The message demanded understanding. It demanded answers. Phase 0 wasn't an order. It was a trigger, one only the 5 generals could have created. She moved toward the central command spire of the starport, weaving through panicked crowds and sparking conduits. Her boots struck the metal floor with quiet certainty. Outside, the sky pulsed with the fire of distant engagements. Human dropships pierced the atmosphere like falling stars, their trails glowing against the orange dusk. High above them, Empire dreadnoughts twisted and broke beneath the pressure of coordinated human strikes. Not chaotic rage, calculated precision. Avery reached the end of the corridor where a blast door had jammed halfway open. Smoke filled the air with the acrid tang of burned circuitry. She crouched and slipped beneath the door, stepping into the shattered remains of the spire's communications hub. Screens flickered, spitting static. Holograms sputtered in ghostly shapes. At the center of the room, a single display glowed steady blue. Her message. Phase 0 pulsed once, then split into a cascading sequence of symbols, patterns only the generals used when speaking in code layered with meaning. Avery approached cautiously, her heart tightening as if bracing for impact. The symbols rearranged, forming a phrase she hadn't seen in years. "We began the war before they killed us." Avery exhaled sharply. The room felt smaller, heavier. The 5 generals had anticipated their own deaths. Not just anticipated, designed around them. They hadn't been caught unprepared. They had walked into the Empire's trap knowingly, creating a deeper trap underneath. The display shifted again. A new pattern formed. "If you are reading this, the Empire took the bait." The words cut through Avery's composure. Her throat tightened. Memories surged, laughter shared over ration packets, strategy sessions fueled by midnight coffee, whispered vows to protect a galaxy that never fully understood the cost of peace. They had always been steps ahead. Even in death. The room trembled violently as something massive exploded beneath the spire. Avery steadied herself with one hand on the console. Alarms wailed again. But she didn't look away from the screen. The symbols shifted one final time. Coordinates. A location deep within the Empire's core territories. A system the Council had always denied existed. Beneath the coordinates, a final line appeared, unmistakably the voice of General Mara Quinn, the oldest and quietest of the 5. "Avery, finish what we started." Her breath stilled. The grieving ache she had carried beneath her ribs sharpened into purpose. The war around her no longer felt like retaliation. It felt like continuation, of a mission her mentors had begun long before the executions. They hadn't just predicted betrayal, they had weaponized it. The spire groaned, metal bending dangerously. Avery stepped back from the console, her eyes burning with clarity. The Empire wasn't simply guilty of murder. It was hiding something, something the 5 generals had uncovered, something worth dying for. She tapped her comlink. "Command, patch me through to all fleet leaders." Static crackled, then multiple channels opened. "Avery? We're engaged across 12 sectors." "Listen carefully," she said, her voice carrying the calm of a sharpened blade. "There's a hidden system. The Empire has been operating off-record. We're changing course." One officer responded, bewildered. "General, mid-operation course change is a massive. It's not optional." A hesitant pause. "Understood." Avery turned toward the fractured window, where human ships knifed through the burning sky. She felt the presence of the 5 generals beside her. Not ghosts, not memories, but architects of a mission far greater than vengeance. She walked toward the exit as the spire collapsed behind her, sparks raining across the corridor like falling stars. Her comlink buzzed again. "General Stone," Command asked cautiously, "what exactly are we heading toward?" Avery lifted her gaze to the heavens where the first human fleets aligned toward the forbidden coordinates. "Truth," she answered. "And the Empire's darkest secret." The corridor lights flickered once more, and in their brief glow, Avery Stone smiled. Not in anger, not in grief, but in certainty. The hunt had finally begun. The human fleets moved like a single organism through the dark, folding into formation with an elegance that made even their alien observers forget to breathe. Avery stood at the helm of the flagship Resolute, her eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the Forbidden System. It pulsed with a faint red glow, like a wound beating beneath layers of darkness. She felt the weight of the 5 generals at her back, not as ghosts but as unspoken promises. Whatever the Empire had hidden there, it had cost them their lives, and entrusted her with the continuation of their mission. The bridge hummed with purposeful tension. Officers worked quietly, their movements steady even as the enormity of their new objective settled over them. They were humans, adaptable, stubborn, capable of finding humor in catastrophe, but the silence now was reverent. Everyone understood they were crossing a threshold no one had been meant to cross. Avery inhaled deeply, feeling the recycled ship air chill her lungs. It made her sharper. Fleet alignment complete, Lieutenant Ward reported. All ships standing by. We're waiting on your signal, General. Avery nodded. Her gaze remained on the red glowing system ahead, coordinates the Empire had buried under a century of false star charts. A place the generals had discovered just before their execution. A place the Empire had killed to protect. Take us in, she said. The Resolute surged forward, followed by thousands of vessels. The transition from normal space to the hidden system was not smooth. The darkness warped around them, bending into a tunnel of distorted light. A low vibration pressed against her ribs, as if the universe itself hesitated at their intrusion. Then the ship burst through the veil. A hush fell over the bridge. Suspended before them was an artificial star, not burning, not alive, but metallic and cold. Orbiting it were dozens of colossal structures, each shaped like a half-formed moon. Their surfaces shimmered with faint energy, pulsing in synchrony. The scale was staggering. These weren't stations. They were machines. What is this? Ward breathed. Avery didn't answer. She stepped closer to the projection as the sensors mapped the nearest structure. The readings returned impossible heat signatures, chemical traces, and energy patterns that formed a chilling mosaic. These were sterilizers, planetary-scale devices designed to burn atmospheres, erase biospheres, and render entire species extinct. Not weapons of intimidation. Weapons of finality. Her jaw tightened. This is what they were hiding. The bridge murmured with disbelief and horror. Even hardened soldiers paled. The Empire had always been oppressive, but systematic extinction? This was something else entirely. A transmission crackled through the comm systems, a harsh, grinding tone that scraped against the ears like metal being torn apart. Then a voice emerged, old and weary, its distortion heavy, but its authority unmistakable. So, Earth finally arrives. Avery stiffened. She recognized that voice from archived broadcasts, ancient recordings of speeches delivered during conquest centuries ago. The Emperor himself. But the timbre was wrong, too fragile, too strained. "Show yourself," Avery said, her tone cool. The hologram flickered to life. The Emperor appeared, seated upon a throne constructed of bone and obsidian, but he looked nothing like the fierce ruler the galaxy revered. His skin sagged, his eyes dulled, his breathing shallow. Behind him, a machinery of tubes and pulsating conduits fed into his body, like a grotesque life support symphony. "You trespass upon sacred grounds," he rasped. "This system is the keystone of galactic harmony." "Harmony?" Avery echoed. "You built extinction machines." "To preserve balance," the Emperor wheezed. "Species multiply. Resources dwindle. Chaos grows. We remove the excess." Avery's nails dug into her palms. "You killed 5 of our finest to protect this." "I removed obstacles." His voice cracked. "Your generals learned too much. They threatened the order we have upheld for 10,000 cycles." Avery felt the grief she had carefully compressed begin to pulse again. Mara's voice, encoded in the Phase Zero message, echoed inside her mind. "Finish what we started." "You call this order," Avery said quietly, But it's fear. It's genocide disguised as strategy. You humans misunderstand your place, the Emperor snarled weakly. You breed chaos. You carry violence in your bones. You adapt too quickly, threaten too easily. Even now, your fleets spread like infection. Avery took a slow breath. Project your fear all you want. But the only chaos in this galaxy comes from your throne. Her officers waited, watching the exchange unfold with growing unease. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You think you can stop what I built? Avery leaned forward slightly, her voice softer, almost compassionate. We're not thinking. We're doing. The Emperor barked a ragged laugh, then coughed violently. When he regained his breath, his gaze sharpened with something venomous. You will trigger your own extinction. These machines respond to intruders. Your presence activates them. Ward's hands flew across his console. General, energy surged from the nearest structure. The metallic star brightened, shedding its cold shimmer. Its surface cracked, revealing a molten core awakening from centuries of dormancy. Lightning-like arcs shot across its shell. Avery's heart thumped once. All ships, defensive scatter formation. The fleet obeyed instantly, dispersing like fragments of shattered glass. The awakening structure pulsed with increasing intensity. The Emperor's hologram flickered. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Avery stared into his dimming eyes. No. You have no idea what they planned. She tapped her wrist display and transmitted the Phase 0 pattern. Across the fleet, systems recognized the hidden code. Engines shifted. Shields realigned. Weapons reconfigured. The generals hadn't just discovered the system. They had mapped its flaws, cracked its architecture, and designed a counterstrike encoded with their dying breath. The activated structure emitted a roaring shockwave, but instead of tearing the fleet apart, the human ships absorbed the blow, bending with it like reeds in a storm. Ward gasped. General, they built us a key. They knew how these machines worked. Avery exhaled slowly, grief and pride intertwining. They always knew. The Emperor stared in disbelief. Impossible. No one could decode the core protocols. 5 human women did, Avery said, voice steady. And they paid for it with their lives. The Emperor's image sputtered violently. Sparks erupted behind him. His machinery wailed. You will doom us all. Avery cut the transmission. She turned to her crew, each face illuminated by the flickering light of the awakening star. Target all sterilizers. Fire when ready. As the first human volleys streaked toward the machines, the metallic star cracked open fully, its core glowing with catastrophic power. Avery's heartbeat steadied. The war wasn't ending. It was just reaching the part the generals had prepared her for. And as the star's surface erupted, she whispered the words only they would have understood. Phase 0 complete.